What's up, guys? Two quick things I need to mention that I forgot to include in the video. One is when reinstalling your new gasket, make sure to press it into place around each of the bolt holes, and that'll make sense once you get there. Don't actually lay it on there, but you press it on. One additional step, the oil filler tube needs to be removed to get your passenger side gasket off. And that's going to be 4 8mm bolts, and that's where that additional gasket is used that I mentioned that comes with the kit. Other than that, enjoy the rest of the video. Today we have in the shop a 2002 Jeep Liberty. It's a 3.7 liter V6, and it's leaking oil on the passenger side back end of the engine, dripping right down on the exhaust, right near the downstream O2 sensor. And I'm 95% sure it's a valve cover gasket on that side. So today I'm going to show you how to replace both sides the valve cover gaskets. So let's move in and take a look here. The first thing you're going to do is pop the hood, obviously, and right here on the driver's side, this wiring harness has a plastic, let me grab a piece of it here, a plastic housing that slides into this first, second and fourth valve cover stud. It slides in right there and runs along the length of the valve cover. This is extremely brittle due to sitting right on top of the hot engine its whole life, which has now been 15 or 16 years. And the idea is that you're just going to pop this off of the studs. It's like a push nut, so it just slides off. But in my experience, as you can see, it's just going to snap. So what I did is just basically broke the whole thing off. And what I'll do when I put this back together is wrap all of this wiring really well in tape, and then put some plastic conduit on it, and maybe even zip tie it up on the fuel line here, so it's not laying directly on the valve cover, but we'll get to that later in the video. So once that's removed, we've got these push nuts that are still on the studs where that plastic housing was. We're going to just pull those off with the pliers and then work our way around the valve cover. These are 10mm either studs or bolts. We're going to work our way around and remove the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the 10mm nuts or bolts. So we'll do that and I'll be right back with you. So look at my setup for a majority of these valve cover bolts. I've just got my little quarter drive impact with a 6-inch quarter-inch drive extension, and then I've got a quarter-inch swivel and a 10mm deep socket. So that works pretty well, especially for the bottom row, to achieve that angle to get down in there and get those all out. So as you can see, these will come loose, but they stay in place. They've got a grommet that holds the bolt in place, so that's kind of nice. You don't have to remember what bolt goes where, because it stays right where it was. So we've got all the bolts loose. Now I'm just going to pop this off. And if I pull this alternator power wire up out of the way and my other wiring harness down, I can slide the valve cover right up through this gap here. So I'll slide it out, and once I've got it out, I'll be back and we'll install the new one. Okay, I've got the valve cover off now. It just slides right through that gap between the alternator wire and the wiring harness that runs on top of the valve cover. And once we've got it out, we've got our new kit, and this is a Felpro Perma-Dry part number VS50594R. And what you're going to get is 2 new Perma-Dry molded gaskets, all the grommets for your bolt holes, and this is called an oil filter mounting gasket. I have yet to see where that's going to be used, but we'll find out later in the video. So in order to get this gasket off, if yours doesn't just pull off like mine, since it's been baked on a while, we're just going to take a flat screwdriver and drive it in between the gasket and the valve cover. Be gentle, you don't want to damage your valve cover or dimple it at all, or that'll cause a leak. So I'm aiming more towards the gasket than I am towards the valve cover. It's definitely been there a while, but we'll just work our way around. You can see there I've gained some, and then we'll go to the next two bolts. Drive that off until we've gone all the way around and gotten our gasket off. Alright, I've popped the gasket off just by working my way around with the flat screwdriver. And now the final step in removal is going to be to pop each of these grommets out that surround our valve cover bolts. A couple methods you can use for this would be a body clip removal tool if you have one. You can just slide that in under the grommet. I probably can't do it one-handed here, but slide it in and then pry it out that way. You could also go from underneath and gently tap on the end of that bolt. You don't want to mess up your threads, but there's a little bit on the end of the bolt that you can use to tap on and drive the grommets out that way. So I'll work my way around, drive those out, and then finally we're going to go over to the wire wheel and clean off the old gasket residue. Here's another method to remove these valve cover bolt grommets. And this, I'm going into such detail on this because this could be the worst part of the job for you if you're really struggling with it like I am. So I've tried a razor blade, I've tried my right angle long needle nose like I mentioned, and you're just going to kill your fingers if you're trying to hold on to the bolt, and you're going to have blisters galore. So let's try this. I've got it viced up with my body clip removal tool, and that just pops right off. And the vise does all the work instead of my fingers. So let's take a couple more and try that again. I'll just grab a few more here. Here's one with the stud on it. And we're just going to vise up the nut. Take our body clip removal tool and pop it off. So I think this is by far the easiest method, and without this the grommet removal could be the worst part of this job for you. So give that a try. If you don't have a vise, you could try a vise grip. If you grab the nut with a vise grip real tight and pry against that, that might work for you, but hopefully that helps. I also wanted to remind you at this point in the video to hit the like button, the thumbs up. I really appreciate it, and it encourages me to keep making videos like this. So it's a lot more work than you see behind the scenes, and I would appreciate any likes. Alright, all the grommets are out. The best tool is definitely the body clip removal tool. Just get underneath and pop them out. And what I did, it's on the floor now, you can't see, but I used the old gasket as a template for where each bolt went. And I can just tell you the middle two on the bottom, or actually this would be the top. The middle two are the studs, and on the top, the outer two are the studs. Everything else is just a normal 10mm bolt. So now we're just going to go to the wire wheel and clean off this old gasket residue. I'm just going to finish up with my roll-lock disc on my right angle die grinder. Alright, I'm back to the makeshift workbench here. I've got it all cleaned up, all the old gasket removed, and you can see, maybe, right here as well as right here, I just nicked the surface with my screwdriver. and I think I'm going to be okay, but be very careful, as I mentioned in the last couple videos, to shoot more towards the gasket side than the valve cover side. You don't want to have any deep gouges that are going to cause a leak later. So now we're going to install our grommets, our new grommets. Just open the bag here, and it's going to help if you use like I'm going to use chain lube, but motor oil or WD-40 or whatever you've got. Vaseline even works good. And you can just put a little bit on the lipped side. So there's a flat side and a lipped side. The lipped side is going to go down into the valve cover. So we'll just press it in just like that. And you might find that you don't even need the WD-40, but you'll just have to experiment for yourself, see how they fit. I'll work my way around and put all those in, and then once we get that done, we'll slide our bolts back in. Yep, I think I'm going to be fine without the WD-40. It's not all that tight of a fit, so we're alright. I'll give you guys the bird's eye view here, putting this back in. Let me plug in my light here for some additional lighting. Alright, so we've got all of our grommets installed and our bolts back in. Pay attention, the driver and the passenger side gaskets are a little bit different. They're only going to fit one side, so you'll know which is which, but I've just set my new gasket on here to make sure it lines up. And now, if I flip it over, we're just going to slide it back in between the two wires like I keep mentioning. The alternator wire is going to go down, and this other harness is going to go up. And something else you're going to want to do is just take a look at the head, the mating surface opposite the valve cover. Make sure it's clean. Mine is, so I'm not going to bother cleaning it. It's going to be a pain if yours does need cleaning, unfortunately, but an important step you don't want to skip. You want to have a nice, clean gasket mating surface. So, I'll just slide this back in, making sure not to pinch any wiring before I bolt it down. It's nice and cold today in the shop, so the heater's running overtime. Sorry about the noise on that. So I got the valve cover slid back into place, and I'm just going to tighten the bolts by hand, and then I'm going to follow the sequence in which I torque them, and I'm going to have to look that up and let you know in just a second. But once we've got that torqued down, we'll move to the driver's side. Alright, the torque spec is going to be 105 inch-pounds. Make sure that's inch-pounds and not foot-pounds. And the sequence that I'm going to use, it's not extremely vital, and I wasn't able to find a sequence on it, but from the inside out, I'm just going to go in an X pattern. So starting with the inside 4 bolts, I'll go crisscross, and then I'll go to the outside 4 bolts, crisscross, and then the last around the perimeter, a crisscross again. And then I'm going to double check everything, either in the same order or just around the perimeter to make sure I've gotten every bolt torqued to 105 inch-pounds. Alright, I've got the passenger side, or sorry, driver side. Hopefully I've been saying that right. We've been on the driver side this whole time. And I've got it all torqued. I've double checked everything. You can see our nice new blue gasket down there. And now we're going to move to the passenger side, our suspect side with the leak. So, first things first, we're going to remove our air box and our intake hose. And then I think we're also going to remove our coolant reservoir. And that's just going to be 2 10mm bolts there, and then a couple hose clamps. There's a hose here and then a hose down there. And have a pan ready to catch. You're just going to lose a little bit of antifreeze there. And then on our airbox and intake, we've just got our 2 hose clamps here. And then I think we're going to remove, I can't quite remember on the airbox, but if I get to it and I find bolts, I'm going to imagine that they're underneath the air filter. So we'll pull the top half off, remove our air filter, and then look down in there and see what bolts we need to remove there. But I'll get that done and be right back. I've got my intake hose off, the top half of my air box off, and the air filter removed. One thing you're going to want to do before removing either of these hoses, relieve the pressure from your cooling system. So take that cap off slowly if it's hot. Ideally your car is not going to be hot at this point. That's another reason I'd recommend starting on the driver's side, is to let your cooling system cool down. So here we are on the driver's side. As I mentioned, we removed our intake boot and our air box. The lower portion of the air box just pulls out of these 3 grommets. And then I removed the 2 heater hoses from up at the firewall up there. And this housing on the harness, just like on the driver's side, just breaks apart and pulls off. But we'll wrap that wiring at the end. And from that point on, other than removing the plastic clip that's holding these steel heater hose lines in place, we're just going to remove our 10 millimeter bolts, and it'll be the same as the driver's side. We'll remove the old gasket, clean up the surface, replace our grommets, and put everything back together. So hopefully that helps. As always, remember to press the like button, that helps me out. And comment if you have any questions. Otherwise, subscribe. And I'll see you on the next video.